Hello and welcome back to Leah Talks. Today I am joined by Helen. So I'm just going to jump straight in. And Helen, can you introduce yourself? Let us know who you are and what you do.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for having me today. Hi, everyone. My name's Helen. I'm the founder of Elska Yoga. So I work with people to support their mental health through yoga movement, breathwork, and meditation. And I've also got another few things that I do as well. So I'm the founder of a community interest company, a CIC, the Exhale Project, which is all about doing work in the community. So I really love working in the local community and feel really passionate about running community projects. So supporting people in that way as well. Um, and I also do a few mentorship programs. So I mentor with Just Breathe, who do training around meditation and breath work. And I run my own mentoring program where I work with yoga teachers and meditation and breathwork guides to just, help and support on this wonderful journey that we all go on as a yoga teacher. So, that's what I do.
Amazing. So it sounds like you are very interested in helping the community.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's a big part of what I do. And I think with my background, where I come from, and the work I used to do before as a social worker, it sort of all feeds into that. And it's a really important element for me, of working in the community. And I do different projects. I'm running one at the moment actually called Yoga in Nature. Which was funded by the local council, which was amazing. So people can come along for free. We do yoga outside, and just the benefits that people are finding, it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, especially working with mental health. Getting out in nature is the number one thing
Yeah.
that I always recommend people to do as well, because, yeah, it's just so healing. So, do you feel like you've always kind of wanted to help others, or is this something that as you've got older, you've just been more interested in?
No, I think it's always sort of been part of my nature and part of my personality, really. And I've worked in different roles. So I worked first of all in the public sector for 15 years before I did anything like this. So I used to work in youth offending and in prisons and in courts and things like that. And again, working with families, working with young people. And then I went into social work. So again, it was really, helping and supporting and working with families. And then my own mental health took quite a massive nosedive. And I was really unwell for, quite well, quite a while on and off. And I just felt like I just had to really make a change because I was just completely stressed, completely burnt out. And it just got to the point where I just couldn't go on working in the way that I was working in those services, unfortunately. So did a bit of a pivot. It was not planned. I'd never sort of planned to teach yoga or anything. But yeah, I did my teacher training, and then it sort of coincided with being very unwell, and I just had to have a bit of a rethink in life, really, and just went down this field, but very much from that angle of helping and supporting people, which I know yoga is all about. So
Yeah,
go
I was
for it.
going to ask how you got into yoga, and I do feel like a lot of people end up getting into yoga because of something major that kind of
Yeah,
happens in their life. Because and lots of GPs recommend it as well. So I can see how, if you are feeling down or anything's going on mentally, yoga can really help that. I know that it can be quite hard to get into, because if you are struggling a little bit with mental health, I know I've been through this myself, like, to actually sit there in silence with yourself can be really, really hard. So how did you go, like, when you were struggling then and you found yoga, what was your first experience of that? Was you, like, enlightened by it? Was it frustrating for you? Like, how did you find your first class?
I can literally now in this moment feel the feelings that I felt going into that first class. So at the time, I was quite into my fitness, like doing a lot of running, doing a lot of gym, that sort of thing. But because I was so unwell and I was, suffering from depression, so my body was just so tired, and I was just completely exhausted. So I just felt like I couldn't access some of those other ways that I would have usually, the other things I would have usually done to sort of support my mental health. And one day I was still in the gym, and my friend and teacher, she said, "Oh, come to my yoga class." And I was like thinking, "Oh my goodness, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. I had all these like stereotypes of what I thought yoga was like, and that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I think there's a lot of pressure on us to feel like, oh, can we do it? Um, and just all these thoughts of like, I can't do it, I can't do it. And she's like, no, come with me. And she was just so gentle and kind. And I went to that first class and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can do it. And it was really gentle, really supportive, really nurturing class, which is what I absolutely needed at that time. And it just showed me what yoga can be like, and like I say, not what I built up in my head that we'd sort of all be stood, doing handstands or something. And so it was just like, it was almost like reassurance and just like hope, I suppose, in a way, which might sound a bit over the top, but in those moments it really wasn't. Because I think when you're suffering with your mental health, and particularly with depression and other mental health conditions, there is a lack of hope, and you do feel like, I'm going to be stuck here like this forever and I will never move past this. So to find that hope in that moment of, okay, maybe I can do something, whether it's gentle, whatever it is, because it doesn't matter, but it's just something to get me out of bed, to get me out of the house, because that's where I was at that time. I was off work and really, really struggling to even get out of bed and even get out of the house. So it was, on that level. And I think, like you say, when you are really suffering with your mental health and when you're that low, just doing one tiny little thing and maybe going out to a class feels too much, and that would maybe be too much for some people. But if you can access something on YouTube or, something like that, and do the sort of yoga that works for you and supports you, then that can be
Yeah.
really helpful. Sorry, I think I've gone off on a bit of a
No, that was good. I was going to say the same thing. It's actually funny how you said you had this picture of yoga of people doing headstands and handstands and stuff, because I hear so many different objections to people why they won't go to a yoga class, and they're all so different. Like some people will say, I'm not a gymnast, I can't do all this stuff. And then other people will say, I don't want to sit there and just stretch, and it's like the complete opposite end of the scale. So it's interesting to hear that, and to let people know who's listening that, there are so many different types of yoga out there. And also different teachers will teach differently, so it's definitely worth going to different classes,
yeah,
to try and find the one that's going to suit you. And if you can't get out, there's online stuff nowadays.
yeah,
COVID was absolutely awful, but now we've got loads of so many different styles and teachers on YouTube for free. So yeah, that's really helpful for anybody looking to try something different for their mental health. So do you find that after your first yoga class, did you get hooked?
yes. I was completely hooked. But it wasn't just like the physical element was part of it. But as we know with yoga, there's so many other elements. And really, it was just the kindness, and it was that connection to other people as well, that at that time was just really supportive. And I think if you're, part of a little like yoga community, like I teach in little village halls and things like that. Like I don't have any big studios or anything. So it's all very, really lovely, not small scale necessarily, but people really get to know each other. And just, even if it's that smile or that welcoming face or whatever it is, I think that's just as big a part of it. But yeah, I did get completely hooked. I was then doing yoga like a lot, and I did go from it's really interesting because I went from definitely needing that more slower pace stuff to actually enjoying the more faster movement of things, and actually doing headstands and things like that for a while. I loved that. And that was, I found that a great sense of purpose at that time. And I've sort of come round and done a full circle where I'm now back to really enjoying the slow, steady movement, the breath work, the meditation, like leaning more into those quieter practices within yoga. And I find like deep value in them now. But as you say, like sometimes, especially if your mind is really busy or you're suffering with your mental health, it can feel quite a lot to sit with yourself and to sit with that stillness. So it's just about doing what feels right for you. That is like my biggest mantra in all my classes: do what feels right for you. And that's going to change over time. And day to day sometimes, so like depending on how you feel.
Yes. Yeah. I do the same actually. I teach in the local village hall, and it is so lovely to have that community and for people
Mm.
to start to to know each other better as well. And I think that's, online yoga is amazing. You can get so much from it, but having that community, there's just something magical about it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
especially if you once you do get to know people, and if somebody doesn't turn up, you can message them and be like, is everything okay? And they've got that somebody checking in on them.
yeah.
Um, which is so powerful, especially if people are really struggling with their mental health. So the next question I was actually going to ask you was, what's the biggest change that it's made in your life? But I guess, it's changed your whole mental health by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped to support it. And I think, to advocate around mental health, like if you are really struggling and you're really suffering with your mental health, like I also went to the doctor and I also access like therapy, talking therapies and things like that. And alongside that, yoga was really supportive, like when I was really unwell. But now I'm in a much better balance with my mental health. It is something that definitely supports me on a daily basis. And it's had a huge change in my life because I now teach yoga and guide breathwork and meditation. Whereas, before I was obviously a social worker and never in a million years thought that I would be a yoga teacher. Like, I still sort of laugh sometimes. I think it's just so funny, like how life can just change and just go in a completely different direction that I would have never thought of. So, yeah, it has made a big change and just made such a better balance in my life. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it was just a lot of stress, a lot of burnout before, and never always feeling like I was running a million miles an hour, but I was never doing enough, you
Mhm.
know. And now having this time now just feels a lot more balanced, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely something that should start to get taught a lot more in schools, I think. I think we're always taught to go, 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 learn, get good grades, but nobody actually teaches you how to slow down and to breathe and to calm your nervous system. And, this is why there is so many people suffering right now. And I've had it this morning with my daughter. She is just one little stress head, and she's only 7 years old, but she's really struggling with sleep at the minute, and I can see that her nervous system is in panic.
Yeah,
So it's I feel like we do need to add more stuff like this into our lives, and it's not taught as much, which is why I feel like yoga teachers are so passionate
yeah,
about like sharing all this stuff as well and teaching breath work and the slower part of things. And you get that as soon as you look at your Instagram account. It's just calmness. I love all your pictures and everything on
oh,
there. They're so beautiful, and
thank
they're very
you.
calming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um. So
That is,
how? Sorry, go
sorry.
on.
No, I was just going to say that is literally like my biggest passion is to just support people with slowing down and, like you say, regulating the nervous system, working with the nervous system. And from that very young age, I've been doing like some work going into schools and working with different schools and things. And it's just wonderful now that schools and the education system is starting to open up to these things, and these ideas. And I went in recently to a local school and we did some breath work, got this like breathing balls. We did this, some nice breath work and then just some lovely yoga movements and did, lots of animal noises and things like that. And the children were like, we were like, oh, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, wait, I feel calm. I feel relaxed. And I was just like, oh, this is just amazing that at that age, they can actually recognize in themselves, these feelings. Whereas like I literally didn't have a clue when I was that age. Like it wasn't even on my radar. So yeah, I think it's definitely really needed.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good, isn't it? I think we've just moved a little bit more into the country, and my daughter's going to a very small school now compared to what she was. And I don't know if it's just people are a little bit more slower out here in the country than the city. Probably that's got something to do with it, but they do tend to do a lot more like slower activities. Like today they're having like a whole gardening day. Like
Oh,
that wouldn't have
wow.
happened in the city school. So it's really nice to see
Yeah.
that they're doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, they do just need it so much. And it's good that they were recognizing that as well in your class.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know it was, and it's just showing children, I think, a different way. Because again, like none of this stuff was on my radar when I was younger. It took me into like really my 30s before I started to know any of these practices.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, to just show, and it might resonate with some children, it might not, but they might just have this little idea, or later in life, they might come back to it and be like, oh, yeah, that's what we talked about in school once, and just make those connections, but also making the connections with the body and the breath and like how they feel, and having those really early understandings around the nervous system. Um,
Yeah. I've been trying to slow down a lot myself lately, and I think I saw something on, it must have been on Instagram or something. I was scrolling on something and it was like, go at the same pace as your child. And
mm,
when read that and I was watching, oh my god, my daughter takes forever to do anything. And I was constantly, I could feel myself getting worked up and I'm like, hurry up, come on, come on, come on. Like constantly trying to rush her. So I have been trying to be a lot more calmer and a lot more patient and trying to slow down and not rush her so much. But it's amazing how you can take these lessons and kind of learn them from your child as well, because they haven't learnt so much of the stress and things yet, anyway, as adults do.
yeah.
So do you find that you can kind of learn from your students as well?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think we're learning every single day. And yeah, just having different conversations with people, and people share things with me sometimes, and it's always learning. And I think that's really interesting what you just said about your daughter, because like she's probably not been socialized yet like we have, where it's like, oh, you've got to go at this pace and you've got to get this done and you've got to be super quick. And so she's just doing things in her own time and in a way that works for her and her nervous system, where we have so many like boundaries put on us, in society, of like, we've got to get to school at this time, and we've got to be at a meeting at this time, and we've got to reply to this email, and we've got to do this. And it's all of those things. Like years ago, obviously with our nervous system, we didn't have any of that stuff many years ago, when we were living in caves or whatever. That wasn't, those stresses and strains weren't there on our nervous system. We had obviously other things, like we could get eaten at any point and things like that. But as we've evolved, obviously our nervous system is still as it always was. And so these extra things can really like impact on us. But
Yeah.
yeah, always learning, definitely every day.
Yeah. So I do have a question for you. So how do you stay consistent in all of this? Because I must admit I struggle a little bit and I have to really force myself sometimes to get on the yoga mat. So how do you stay consistent?
I think for me, like, again, it's definitely changed a lot over the years. Whereas I used to think I have to do like a physical practice every day or whatever. I now do like my meditation and breath work every day, because that really supports how I feel. And when there's times when I don't, I really notice the difference. And my teacher always said it's about, I can't remember the exact words, but something along the lines of, it's about doing it when you feel good, that then supports you when you don't feel so good. Because sometimes when we go to these practices, we remember when we're like not feeling good. We're like, oh yeah, oh, I need to do that again. Whereas it's in those times when we're feeling okay that sometimes things can slip, or that's how I find anyway. So it's just trying to be consistent and really just taking the pressure off. So if I do 5 minutes, I do 5 minutes. If I do 10 minutes, I do 10 minutes. So not trying to do like an hour, or, putting big timescales on things. Also with my children, often they're a bit older now, so it's not quite so much the case, but used to be like I'd have a child hanging off me, or a child clambering on me, or, you know, kids shouting whilst I'm trying to sit and meditate. Like that's okay. It is what it is. And I think that's what's really important as well, to like with these practices, we are living in a modern world. So lots of us don't have the time to shut ourselves away for long periods of time, or to be completely excluded and have like a completely quiet space. So I would just sit really anywhere to do my meditation. And yeah, if there's noise going on around me, there's noise. But it's been a process. Like I didn't immediately arrive at this, but I think I used to be very self-critical and like run myself down if I hadn't done this. And then I'm thinking, that's completely counterproductive to like what I'm trying to do. So yeah, just trying to be kind, trying to be compassionate to myself, and just to do what I can do, take the pressure off, do a few minutes here, a few minutes there when I can.
Yeah. Awesome. So, do you have any tips for people that are just starting out in maybe their fitness or yoga, or just trying to improve their mental health? Obviously, we've just said, try and stay consistent as much as you can, but have you got any other kind of tips for anyone?
I think really something that you mentioned earlier was about like trying different yoga classes, try different yoga teachers, like see what feels right for you, because one teacher is going to resonate with someone but might not resonate with someone else. So maybe try a few different things, a few different classes, a few different teachers, and just see what resonates with you. And if you go to a class or a teacher and you're like, oh, it doesn't quite feel right for me, don't think, oh, well, the whole of yoga is awful then. And, try someone else and try someone else. And yeah, just be kind to yourself, which I know is hard, especially if you're struggling with your mental health. It's probably one of the things that isn't feeling, very strong, to be kind and compassionate to yourself. But the biggest thing with your mental health is just taking really tiny steps. So maybe it isn't that you're going to go to a whole yoga class, but maybe it is that you're going to have a little look, like we mentioned earlier, on YouTube, and find a class that you can do. And maybe it is that you're going to do 5 minutes. Maybe you're not going to do 45 minutes or an hour. So yeah, just taking those little steps and then really being proud of yourself, which again is hard, but not something that we're often taught to do, but to just be like, yeah, I did do that. Um, and to just take it day by day. I mean, our minds love to jump ahead, they love to jump back, and they love to jump ahead. They don't really like to be here now in this present moment so much. So, as much as anyone can be, and doing things like grounding exercises as well, and that breath work and stuff, or just grounding to the space where you're in now, touching the carpet. How does the carpet feel? Touching your clothes, touching your jacket. Like, they're really um, great grounding exercises to just support someone to just keep in the present moment and not have the mind sort of ping ponging around everywhere.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of grounding work in your classes then? Because I guess that is a very big thing to focus on for mental health.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I do, elements of that in every class. I do breath work in every class. When we're doing like our yoga in nature, it's wonderful because there's so many sounds around. So we can really draw awareness to different sounds. We can like touch the grass. We can, feel the sun on our skin. We can watch the clouds. So there's like lots of obvious things that we can do when we're out in nature. But for me, it's really like sharing these little bits each time, that then someone might be like, oh yeah, I can do that, I can do that by myself, I can do that at home, or I can do that walking down the street. A lot of the breath practices I share, I'm like, you can do this walking down the street, you can do this sat in a meeting, pretty much, you could do this sat on the tube. No one's going to know that you're doing this breath, but your nervous system is going to feel it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really nice to share things like that with people, that they can just then, because then it's those bit by bit little building blocks that people are just bringing in, like into their daily life, and just integrating it.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I used to, well, I practiced that once because I did jury duty.
Oh,
Oh my
yeah.
God, that was the most nerve-wracking thing ever. And I was like, I think I was the first person to be called up like to the
Oh,
jury stand. And
yeah.
like obviously I'm not allowed to go into too much detail there, but it was a very horrible case. And I could feel my whole body shaking. And I went around, I sat in the desk, I clung to the bottom of the desk, and I just like dug my feet as hard as I could into the ground to
Yeah.
try and ground myself. And I was wiggling my toes. And I tell you what, within 5 minutes, I was calm. Like
Yeah.
I was so shook up before that. And
Yeah.
so it just goes to show how much it does work. Because I think it was only like a couple of days before, I think been listening to a podcast or something about it. And I thought, right, I need to put that into action right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely works. I think another thing that you mentioned was not looking behind and forward and staying present as well. And I think that is definitely a huge thing because it's so hard to do. Like I really struggle with this. I'm constantly thinking, about past things and then worrying about the future.
Yeah.
And, you can't change the past.
Mm.
And when you look into the future, like, you there's no point in worrying about it if it's not happened yet. Do you know what I mean? You need to really focus on what you're doing right now. Have you got any tips for that? Because that is something that I definitely struggle with.
Yeah, I think for me, because, and obviously it still happens, but I used to worry about things a lot. And the other thing is rumination. So we ruminate a lot. We tell ourselves stories, and before we know it, we've gone down the path and we've done this, that, and the other, and this has happened, and so and so's done that, and blah, blah, blah. And you've had this, and you've like half an hour, and you've gone this massive long story in your
Yep.
head that hasn't even happened. And you're like, oh my goodness. So for me, it has just been building the awareness like over many, many years, because I used to have really long commutes to work, like an hour and a half every day, there and back. And so sometimes I'd be in the car driving and I would just ruminate over and over. And your nervous system feels that. Your nervous system doesn't know that these are thoughts that we're having that aren't true,
Mhm.
that it literally thinks that this is happening. So it can really, not be supportive for the nervous system. So I think for me, the first thing was the awareness. So just really noticing my thoughts. So, like, okay, right, I've gone off on this massive story now in my head, bring myself back. And that's when things like touch can be really helpful, because that again centers us, that grounds us. Um, Again, the breath work, taking a nice inhale in, then exhaling out through the mouth, or even having like a sigh, like that's really
Yeah.
good for the nervous system. Again, it centers us in the moment, because when we're thinking about like our breath or our touch, our brain can't also be thinking about other stuff.
Mhm.
So it might be quite momentary at the beginning, like we might find it small moments of bringing us back, but the more we do it over and over, the more we get used to doing it, if that makes sense. Meditation for me has been huge, and there's so many different meditations, and you can get great meditations online and on YouTube. You can get guided ones where you can literally just lie there and be told a story. Listen to that person's words. Like, if you really listen to their words, you're going to be in the present moment. I work a lot with a mantra based meditation, which helps me. It's a particular meditation that actually helps to like declutter your mind. So it's great for rumination. So it's sort of almost like goes like this through your mind as you go down through the layers of the subconscious, and just takes all of, the crap and the rubbish away. And then sometimes you get this like thing pop up and you're like, oh my God, where's that come from? you know but it just, so that helps as well. um and yeah, if we're focusing on our breath, we can't be focusing on something else. So sometimes I find it like I'm rushing around the house. I'm like, oh my God, there's a bit blah, 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 blah. And I'm literally like, my brain is going a million miles an hour. And the other day I just did it. And I just put my hand on the door handle. I was going into like the bedroom or something. I was like, right, notice that door handle. Really look at that door handle. Feel that door handle. And it's just like in that moment, it just brings you back. It grounds you back. So it's like, can be really simple things like that. If you're in the garden, you can go and look at a flower, you can look up at the sky, or you can look at anything. Like, you look at my watch. Like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. But yeah, so grounding through touch, through the breath, through meditation. Yeah, anything like that can help.
I love that. So if anybody's listening, that's your little task for the rest of the day is to really
Definitely.
notice things.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
That this has been so helpful. So for anybody who's listening who maybe wants to start getting into yoga or wants to work a little bit more on their mental health, can you let everybody know where they can find you and how you can help?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me on Instagram, elska.yoga, which is ELSKA.yoga. Or my website is www.elskayoga.co.uk. And really, I work in lots and lots of different ways with people, do lots of things online and in person, one to ones, and just really working in whatever you need, whatever that person needs, that individual practice, whether it's movement, whether it's breath work, whether it's meditation, whether it's other things. And I'm also doing my yoga, my mentoring for yoga teachers. So if anyone wants to work around that, to just have that help and support, because I just remember like qualifying my 200 hours and being like, oh my goodness, what on earth do I do? Like, how do I start a class? Like, how do I even do any of this? How do I put a class together? How do I incorporate breath work? How do I, so many, like, I felt so confused and so overwhelmed. So yeah, the Rise Business mentoring program is to support yoga teachers and breathwork and meditation guides, just if they want to work on an individual project, or they want to do a specific thing, or if it's just a more general help me, and also always that's just really individualized to what that person needs.
Awesome. So I will leave all of the links down in the description below, wherever you're watching or listening to this. So go and check Helen out, go and give her a follow. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Leah, for having me.
Thank you.